Hi, and welcome back to Becca Babbles podcast. I'm your host, Becca. I'm a certified personal trainer, holistic health coach, and future chiropractor on my way to figuring out this thing we called life. Now, let's get babbling.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Becca Babbles podcast. I'm your host, Becca, and this week we're talking all about chronic pain. This was a topic that was really near and dear to my heart, just because I've kind of mentioned it a little bit on the podcast, but I've been dealing with my own chronic pain ever since I think it was try five. I started to develop this tingling feeling in my hands, and it was a rough time, not gonna lie. And I've also been around people who have been dealing with chronic pain, and pain that almost feels like it takes over their entire life. And I just wanted to provide some hope and direction for people who are dealing with either it may be acute pain or it may be chronic pain. And when I define chronic pain is something that you have had this pain for more than four weeks. And you've done a trial of care, maybe with a physical therapist or a chiropractor or an orthopedist, and you just aren't seeing results, and it's something that is impacting you on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I decided to be in the profession that I'm in, is I want to help people who are in acute pain or chronic pain get better, move better, and feel more confident in their day-to-day basis. But I wanted to provide you almost like a mindset of what my thought process is when I am dealing with someone who is going through any sort of pain and situation, and also just to kind of give you guys what I've been dealing with, just so that you can realize that there is hope. I think there's not enough conversation about there being hope with people who are dealing with pain. It's just you just got to push through the pain and it's fine. And it's well, no, there is time to push and then there's time to pull back. And that was something that I really struggled with. So for me, to give you a little bit of background, it was, I had noticed when I was lifting at the gym, I'm always consistent at the gym. I'm doing at least minimum 3 days a week at the gym. There was a period of time when I was only doing 2 days a week at the gym. But now that I am doing more, less of my horse job that I was doing, I wanted to up some of my days in the gym. And so I'm super conscious about my health and the foods that I'm eating and all the things. But yet I'd always noticed when I did overhead pressing that once I did 15 reps with 15 pounds, I could never progress. And it was really frustrating because I was I really want to get better and get those shoulder gains. Who doesn't? And when I'd notice when I was overhead pressing, I'd just get this in my left arm. It would just start to shake. And then it almost started feeling like this crampy feeling in my shoulder. And it hit every single time. And it was super frustrating because I was I just want to get those big shoulders and get those gains. And it was just never happening. And so, of course, as a chiropractic student, decided to just mess around with my friends and be oh, I can be a case study. This would be fun. So practicing with my friends and practicing on how to go through an exam, we did a test called upper limb tension test, and boom, lit me up. And if you don't know what this test is to help rule in or rule out what's called cervical radiculopathy. It can also be used for other cases if you do things like neurodynamics, and it can actually go into a whole healing protocol and all that stuff, but that's another podcast for later. But that was the first time where I had going to lecture and reading studies and stuff like that where it had talked about nerve pain, but I had never once myself felt what nerve pain felt like. And I felt it and I was oh my goodness. And then I remember the next day um I went to go walk with a friend, and my whole hand, just first couple seconds going into walking, my whole hand just went numb. And I was and I don't know if maybe I just started feeling more self-conscious just because I had finally felt the feeling of like, oh, this is what nerve pain felt like. And then I became super hyper aware of everything that was going on within my body. And, or if it was just like that was something crazy that just had happened. But I remember just noticing that. And the thing I think that got me the most was when there's this thing called Mackenzie retractions, where if if you're dealing with some sort of spinal issue, most of the time to rule out the spine, we do these things called Mackenzie retractions or chin retractions, where you tell the patient to like basically make a double chin. So if you're on the watching the video right now, it's basically me just going like this and doing that a bunch of times. And what you want to happen is the pain to go from, let's say I was feeling in my elbow, you'd want the tingling pain or whatever pain to like almost light up in their neck. This can also work with the lower body as well, but you want it to go to the neck. You don't want it to either intensify the pain in the hand or to like spread down to the fingertips. And I remember my friend telling me, she's like, oh, just do the chin retractions, it'll be fine, like you'll get better. And I went, it's not getting better. And then she was like, how many have you done? And I was like, 10. And she's like, you got to do at least 15. And I did 15. It was like 15 or 30, she had told me. And I remember just being like, my whole hand is like lighting up right now. And she went, ugh. And both of us were like, I don't know what to do at this point. Which, like, in hindsight, like not everyone's going to respond to Mackenzie retractions. And yes, it's great when they do, and it's so powerful and it's so cool when like retractions do help a patient. There's been a few of them in clinic that I've currently been seeing, and it helps them a lot. But that's not always the answer. But then I remember internally I was freaking out and I was like, well, if this isn't helping, then what else am I supposed to do? And then, of course, then I start going to all my mentors and teachers, and thankfully, because I'm in chiropractic school, I have the ability to go ask and talk and stuff like that. And my one mentor had told me, he was like, do lateral Mackenzies, which is basically me bringing my left ear to my left shoulder. And then I remember telling him, it was the weirdest thing in the world, but my like cuticle of my thumb just started to light up. He was like, that's interesting. And I just remember this like fear starting to build up inside of me of like, will this ever get better, or am I always stuck like this? And then try 7 happened, and I started getting like, I would sit in documentation class, and this was the worst because this was like our long lecture day, and I would get alternating numbness and tingling in my hand. And at that point, I remember like overhead pressing really sucked at that point, and I could remember when I was doing dumbbell rows that I could tell in my left hand, like I couldn't hold on to the dumbbell. It would just like start coming out of my hand compared to my other side. It wasn't like a huge difference, but I could just tell something was off. And that was really scary. And I didn't know what to do. But thankfully, again, like I had the support of my mentors and people at school, and working through it, it's gotten better now that I've been in clinic, and I've been able to have like my pod partner have more of a focus on it, or also like my CFD kind of like overseeing that, and also of course doing my own research and own rehab and stuff like that. But there was a period of time where like I couldn't do any upper body exercise because that made it worse. I'd get like tingling in my upper trap, I'd get pain in my elbow, which a lot of people don't know this, but sometimes your elbow pain can be coming from a nerve issue and not just like a like joint issue, which is really crazy. And that's why you need to have someone overseeing you, to who is good at ruling in and ruling out which tissue is the issue. But besides that, um I would I'd have different things start to pop up, and then I remember just being like, will I not be able to like lift overhead anymore, or will I not be able to do upper body exercises, or when is this ever going to get better? And just dreading my documentation class because I knew that I was going to have to sit there and having this alternating numbness and tingling, and thinking about how like I would have to change the way that I lived my life because this is uncomfortable. But then I started doing the rehab. I started to get better. And now I've actually been able to start doing upper body exercises again. And it's really interesting because I've found that the more curious that I get about how my body is improving or changing, or just being like, does this exercise make me feel better or worse? Okay, it makes me feel worse. Okay, it's not that that exercise is good or bad, or that I am good or bad, or that I am failing or not failing. It's just not the right exercise for me right now. And I think that's really important because when I was dealing with this chronic pain, and I still deal with it a little bit, we're getting better, we're getting there, that the curiosity component to it is really important. And realizing that you will not be stuck here forever, but the more times that you tell yourself that you are, that's just ingraining that into your head, that you will be stuck there and you can never see the light at the end of the tunnel, or you can never see an out, which can be really difficult when you're dealing with something like this by yourself. So when I approach a patient who's dealing with chronic pain or any sort of pain, there's this stoplight analogy that I always like to talk about when it comes to movement, because no movement is good or bad. It's just what is working for you right now. My goal is to like open up freedom of movement, allow you to twist, allow you to reach up overhead, allow you to squat to the ground. I want you to be able to move, not only for you to do your like what are called ADLs, activities of daily living, which is like going to the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, or reaching up overhead and grabbing something out of the cabinet. But like, I want you to be able to like go after your goals and like be able to, I don't know, like PR a deadlift that you're really excited about, or maybe you want to run a marathon. Like, I want you to feel like you're striving and thriving and not just surviving. So when it comes to the stoplight analogy, there's green light movement, yellow light movement, and red light movement. And the idea here is, when I first was dealing with this like numbness and tingling in my hand, a red light movement for me was overhead pressing and pull-ups. Anytime I did overhead pressing or pull-ups, I would get like a bunch of numbness and tingling in like my upper back area. And then sometimes later on in that day, I'd get it in my fingers. There was one time where I was so sensitive that just like flexing my head, I started feeling like tingling in my finger. But that was when I was like super inflamed and sitting all day. So, yeah, do not recommend that for myself. But that was a red light movement for me. That movement made me worse. It felt really bad and I hated it. A yellow light movement is something that kind of creates some irritation, but is tolerable. So for me at the time, it was rowing. Rowing, I felt fine with for the most part, but it was still kind of like I could get some elbow pain with that. Or for me, and this sounds really weird, but like sitting for a period of time was kind of irritating, but I could tolerate it for a little bit, but too much would aggravate me a lot. And then a green light movement is thing that causes no pain. No pain or no increase in pain. So me walking was really helpful for me, moving around. And I think honestly that's one of the reasons why I've gotten so much better, is because I'm in clinic. I'm moving around with patients. I'm not sitting in lectures for 2 hours and having to sit for most of my day. Instead, now I'm like moving around and I'm not stuck in this slouched position. Because what I've actually found for me is that slouching makes it worse, to where when I retract my or bring my scapulas down, almost, if like anyone's ever told you like pull your scaps down into your pockets, that actually makes it better, which is really interesting if you like know anything about like nerves and slack and stuff like that. um so that's kind of where my scale first started when it came to this stoplight analogy. So just again, those red movements are things that cause really intense pain. Yellow movements are ones that you can kind of tolerate but are a little bit irritating. Green movements is it's safe, it's good, and you feel great while doing them. When I first get a patient, what I want to be doing is a ton of green movements. I want you to see that you can move and that you're not limited to what you think you are, or that there's this like all or nothing mindset of like I can't move, I can't do this, I can't do that. I want to be able to show you that like, hey, you can move and you are capable of doing things, but sometimes I need to show you so you can actually realize that. Also, movement is really healthy for the body and allows for recovery to occur just because of all the like natural processes and like chemicals that like flood your system when you are moving. Being sedentary or being just in one position for a long period of time doesn't help the body heal, doesn't bring those chemicals that you need to the system. So we want to be moving is the big thing, but we have to find movements that are that make you feel good. And if that means doing a child's pose, we're doing a child's pose. I remember the first couple of exercises that I was doing when I was first healing, they were so like simple, and I want to say dumb, but like they weren't dumb. They were so simple and like nothing, but like it was something that made me feel good. So we did a lot of that. Because the big thing, what happens with people who are dealing with chronic pain is not only are you dealing with the pain and maybe an injury that happened that then later on turned into chronic pain, but you're also dealing with the fact that like your nervous system needs to feel safe and it's overprotecting you right now. When the body uses pain as a way to make you safe, and that may sound counterintuitive, but if you think about it, let's say you hurt your foot and you were a forager in the forest and you have to go out and get food. If you keep just jamming your foot that you just hurt after an injury and you just keep jamming that as you're like foraging around, you're going to make it worse and worse and worse. So what your body does is send signals of pain to be like, hey, we need to avoid this movement so we don't make it worse. What ends up happening is people who are dealing with chronic pain, that signal is so loud because your body's trying to protect you so much that we need to tell the nervous system like, hey, it's okay. You don't need to be in fight or flight right now, and you can chill out for a little bit because you are safe and it is okay. Again, easier said than done, but that's where those safe positions and doing a lot of them sends that signal to the body that like, hey, movement is okay. We are safe. We are okay. And you can start loosening up. Then once you start feeling better, what I want to start doing is start adding in yellow exercises. Now, we're not going to add in a ton. Like my first visit with you, I'm not going to do a ton of yellow exercises with you, and I might not do any at all because we don't want to poke the bear, especially if you're coming in with like pain that you've been dealing with for a long period of time. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to do a ton of green exercises. We're going to flood the system with green exercises. And then one day when you start feeling better, I'm going to start coming in and being like, hey, let's try this exercise. So like for me, I decided to try some rows. I was like, okay, I'm going to try some rows and see how they feel. And they actually felt pretty good. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So we start adding in a little bit more of those rows. Another thing that was, I wasn't sure if it was going to help or not, but I would do like hanging from a bar, but I'd make sure I'd pull my scaps down. And that actually felt really good. But before, it didn't feel good. It was like we're okay, but I tended to have a lot of symptoms afterwards. And so we introduced those yellow exercises as well. And I started doing more of those at the gym. And then I just became curious and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to try like a dead hang. I only did it for like 5 seconds because I wasn't sure if that was going to poke the bear too much. But I did a dead hang for 5 seconds and I was like, you know what? I feel pretty good. And that's what this stoplight analogy is. You start slowly bringing in those yellow exercises to then turn them into green exercises. And then those red exercises are slowly going to become yellow. And then those yellows are slowly going to become green. And then you start to realize that your ability of doing movement increases. Your world becomes bigger because you're able to do more movements. Now I'm at the point where it's like, I can do bench pressing. That's a horizontal pressing. So I'm first starting off with um, pushing in front of me rather than pushing overhead because that's still something that causes me symptoms. But I can also now do a landmine press, which is like almost a full like straight up arm overhead, but I'm more at like a 45-degree angle. And that doesn't tend to poke the bear as much. And the same thing can happen with you. But I also think the biggest thing when it comes to like looking at progress when it's dealing with chronic pain is it's more than just getting out of pain. Dr. Susie Squat on Instagram made an amazing post that I love. She was talking about how most people see rehab and what it means to make progress, and it was like a circle, like half of it was being like not in pain anymore, the other half was like doing a bunch of exercises, and she's like what actually making progress looks like, and she listed off a ton of things: sleeping better, less frequent flare-ups, lifting more load, learning about your body, moving every day, sorry, more everyday movement, more challenging exercises, recovering easier, less fear around movement. These are all things that have nothing to do with pain. And I think we forget that when you have less flare ups, when you're able to increase load, when you become more curious about your body, the fear of movement starts to like dwill away and you're actually making progress. It's almost like when you first start lifting in the gym and you're like making those newbie gains and you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like I'm getting so much stronger. But then those slowly start to decrease and you can't keep just adding like 5 pounds onto the squat rack bar. But then maybe you're able to work on your mobility and you're able to squat deeper, or maybe you're able to change the tempo. And those are still all ways of making progress. It might not seem like it because like on social media it's like it's not something that's like super flashy and like cool and stuff like that, but it's still making progress. The same thing applies here when you're dealing with chronic pain. If you're able to like get better sleep, if you're able to do more challenging movements, if you're able to like get more curious about your body, that means you're making progress, and that should be really exciting. That's a really big thing is like you're gonna have these like ups and downs when you're dealing with treatment, and sadly you won't get this like overnight you feel amazing, or maybe you do like a couple weeks of like doing treatment. It's not gonna happen overnight. Like your body created this protective mechanism for a long period of time. It's gonna take some time to get out of it, but if you're able to see those tiny wins, you should celebrate them because they are big wins, even though you might think that they're tiny. Because I'm telling you right now, if you're able to just do a little bit more of movement than you did the week before, that should be celebrated. If you feel like you can become more curious about your body and not fearful, that is a win. And I know it may be frustrating to like feel like you don't know all the answers or you don't feel like 100% of yourself. But again, your nervous system needs to feel safe so then we can slowly start building it back up again. It's almost like if you're dealing with a rescue puppy. When you first get a puppy, the puppy's like looking around the house and it's like, I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I like you. I don't know if I like the dude who wears the hat that walks into the house. That's kind of scary for me, and I'm going to bark at him and I don't like you. But then as the puppy starts to get more comfortable and feels safer, It's allowed to move around the house. He's okay with maybe snuggling up next to the guy who has the hat, but he doesn't want to be touched by the guy who has the hat. That's the same thing when you're dealing with your body and your nervous system. It takes some time for it to decrease its safeguards. But again, the pain signal that your body is providing you is just information. Stop looking at it as something that you are a failure or that you're broken or that you're weak. You're not. You just need to find a provider that will support you and guide you in creating a safe environment for your body so that you can calm it down and then build it back up. It takes time and it may not always be fun, but I promise you it will be worth it. So, if you have any more questions when it comes to dealing with chronic pain or how you should support yourself through this process, you can always send me a message on Instagram at Becca Ann Wellness. At that I was about to say my email. You can always send me a message on Instagram at Becca Ann Wellness, or you can send me an email at beccababelspodcast@gmail.com. And with all that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to babble with you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Becca Babbles Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, the best thing that you can do is leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any other listening platform of your choosing. If you want to learn more about me, you can do that by following me on Instagram at Becca Ann Wellness, or by checking out my blog, freebies, offers, and newsletter on my website at beccaannwellness.com. If you want to share the love of the podcast, you can do that by taking a screenshot and sharing it on social media and tagging me and the podcast at Becca Ann Wellness and using the hashtag Becca Babbles Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to babble with you next time.